Frey nodded in response, giving a comforting response. That's right. He seems conscious and doesn't have any serious injuries. If he's just exhausted, he'll be back to normal with some rest. Unless they defeat Ivalage, they won't be able to rest easy, even though they knew. This, they had no choice but to speak cheerfully. If I thought about it deeply, I felt like I was going to give up before the fight even began. To prevent this from happening, I was trying to improve my mood even a little. Veldora was about to take a step forward, but stopped in his tracks. It seems like we were suddenly thwarted. The fact that they couldn't be happy, even though the situation had supposedly improved, gave an idea of the extent of the despair everyone felt. I'll give it back to you, so let's play some more. Hum. Veldora was also hesitant. However, I had no choice but to move forward. Velgrind's pressure from behind was dangerous. Maybe he was scared. That's how I felt, and the option of running away was blocked. You said you couldn't win against me. Veldora wanted to complain, but naturally. He didn't have the courage to say it out loud. Rather than doing something like that, it would have been better to face Ivalage. Rai Rimuru, please come quickly. With this prayer in his heart, Veldora threw himself into the battle against Ivalage. Meanwhile, Ruminez finished healing Milim with holy magic and declared that her injury was fine. All wounds have healed, but please refrain from further fighting. It's no problem, I can still fight. Milim answered with fighting spirit, but Ruminez gave her a stern look. Don't be so ridiculous. You've been going on a rampage for so long, and fatigue is building up in your body. Your body has been repeatedly destroyed and regenerated, and even if it looks like it's back to normal, it's still fragile. You need to get plenty of rest and get your blood and flesh circulating. Otherwise, you won't be able to fully recover. It was a sharp observation, but it was true. If Milim activated her ultimate skill, Wrathful King Satanale, and went into Stampede, she would be able to absorb any external material and infinitely regenerate her body. It wouldn't matter if it broke, so it wouldn't be a problem even if she fought recklessly. Of course, it would be a big problem in another sense, but that's a different story. Currently, Milim is not relying on her ultimate skill, Wrathful King Satanale. In other words, the amount of energy recovered is very weak, although the maximum amount is large. It is generally enormous. The energy that was wasted fighting Ivalage was not going to be recovered so easily. Even Milim understands that. However, we cannot stop here. Among the warriors present, Milim boasted exceptional strength. The only ones standing next to her were Velgrind and Veldora. Even Velgrind had not yet fully recovered. As Ruminez had said, even though her injuries had healed, her energy density had still been reduced by about 40%. Working together with Testarossa and Obra, they were doing their best to suppress the demonic aura that Ivalage was emitting. By the way, although Obra has recovered a little, she is still about 70% exhausted, and her complexion is still pale. Even though Testarossa was over 80% exhausted, she looked calm. In this case, Testarossa, who was tired, twalled, troubled, exhausted, and yet didn't let anyone know it, was the one who should have been praised as a model lady. And so, Veldora was now facing off against Ivalage all by himself. They are fighting better than expected, but their fighting style is aimed at buying time. That was the correct answer, Milim thought. If they waited, Rimuru and Guy would join them. The real action would begin after that, so there was no need to rush now. However, Milim had a bad feeling. Ivalage is playing. However, what if something happens that makes you take it seriously? Milim instinctively knew that she had to defeat him before that happened. And what about Veldora? I understood this after actually fighting Ivarage. This guy is learning my techniques. Ivalage was growing at an alarming rate. They take on human form, acquire martial arts skills, and utilize and develop them. It seems that he even learned about Milim and Chloe's fighting style from his time. As their opponent, he is now applying that knowledge to his fight against Veldora. If he were to grow anymore, it might become difficult for him to fight alongside Rimuru. Or rather, if it was discovered that he had strengthened the enemy, Veldora would undoubtedly be scolded. No, I must avoid that. Veldora was tempted to just go at it with all his might just this once, but he held himself back. He decided that it was best to maintain the status quo while trying not to provoke her as much as possible. Milim thought they should defeat them right away, while Veldora decided to wait until everyone was gathered. Opinions were divided, but in the end the only strategy available was to maintain the status quo. It was unclear whether Milim's full-power Dragon Star Explosion Flame Ha Drago Nova would be enough to bring down Ivalage. Veldora, do you have any techniques that can kill him in one hit? Milim, ignoring Rumina's warnings, asked as she stood alongside Veldora. No, I have a wide range of techniques, but they are no match for your dragon. Star Explosion Flame Ha Drago Nova. Veldora also has some incredibly powerful techniques, but in terms of maximum power, they are no match for Dragon Star Explosion Flame and Drago Nova. Veldora can be quite confident, but his self-analysis is accurate. Upon hearing this, Milim had no choice but to make a difficult decision. In that case, it seems best not to get involved carelessly. So, this time, Veldora and Milim teamed up to face off against Ivalage. Despite that, Ivalage seems to be having fun. Far from being relaxed, it seemed they didn't really feel threatened. Veldora stepped forward and thrust with a straight punch, which Milim used as a diversion to get behind him, aiming for the moment when Ivalage's body stiffened. After receiving Veldora's punch, Milim grabbed him from behind. The plan was to restrain him and then use Veldora's abundant mystical wave, Fertile Paradox, to capture him. However, it doesn't work. The moment Veldora tried to activate abundant mystic wave, Fertile Paradox, Ivalage's own magical power exploded, blowing Milim away. Veldora hurriedly dodged, but was hit by Ivalage, who jumped out of the blast and slammed him into hard rock at a speed faster than the speed of sound. Hard rock, which is thousands of times stronger than concrete, was reduced to ashes like sand, showing just how powerful it was. GRRR, blowing me away is such a humiliation. Ouch, that was awful. This guy is getting really good at reading the situation. If it gets to this point, it might even become difficult to buy time. Even though Milim and Veldora challenged together, they were easily defeated. Although we can still fight, it is no longer a matter of maintaining the status quo. Velgrind, Obra, and Testarossa, who had been suppressing the demonic aura emanating from Ivalage, also had grim expressions on their faces as they felt the pressure of the swelling presence. And at that moment, something fell from the sky. It was Dino with a large hole in his chest. Milim was the first to notice. That's Dino. La. Veldora also nodded. In fact, he was good friends with Veldora and Dino. He even invited them to his room in the labyrinth and read manga together. So when Veldora noticed that Dino was injured, his eyes sharpened. Dino is also supported by two women. Was it Pico and Gracia? It seems their companions are with them, but it seems something has happened. Benimaru, who was monitoring the entire battlefield, also noticed the presence of the three at almost the same time as Milim and Veldora. He also noticed not only Dino's condition, but also the panicked looks of Pico and Gracia, and realized that something strange had happened. Dino is strong. Even Pico and Gracia were strong enough that there was no way they could be defeated by any of the cryptids out there. It would be one thing if they were facing Velzard, but I hadn't heard that dino and the others were heading towards the former Eurizania. However, even though Dino and the others were under Benimaru's command, they were not his subordinates. Even if he slacked off again, it wouldn't be a problem since I didn't have high expectations. However, if something unusual were to happen, that would be a different story. Veldora-sama, leave this to us. As soon as he shouted that, Benimaru took action. He quickly accepted Dino and the others, protecting them with a barrier. Veldora turned towards Ivalage. I wanted to give it my all and defeat him, but if I couldn't win, it would be troublesome. I had released the stress from my fight with Milim by defeating Kakashi, but it seemed like my patience was being tested at an incredible rate. However, I have to be patient here. Ivalage looked like a beautiful woman, so Veldora was reluctant to hit her with all his might. In that sense, it was probably Veldora's role to put his life on the line and hold Ivalage back. I'll do it. A job this big won't be satisfied with just 3 plates of pudding. It was a cry from the soul. Veldora prepared himself to be hit and began to move to restrain Ivalage. With the support of Pico and Gracia, Dino was protected. Ruminous holy magic was activated and healed Dino. It was an amazingly fast healing that lived up to the name of God's miracle. I wish I could have slept longer. Idiot. If it weren't for Ruminas, you might never have woken up. It's true. I'm so glad to be alive. Gracia yelled in exasperation, while Pico burst into tears. Dino, who was trying to lighten the mood, regrets that it was a mistake. So what happened? Benimaru asked directly. Well, that's... Just as Dino was about to answer, something fell from the sky again. This time it happened so fast that no one could react in time. By the time they noticed, a crater had appeared in the ground. Benimaru braced himself, thinking it was an attack, but it seemed that something was different. When the dust cleared, someone was lying in the center of the crater. Why you? Benimaru looked on guard and observed the situation. It was Feldway, an overwhelmingly powerful man and the mastermind behind everything. He had failed to destroy the sacred tree, been defeated by Diablo, and disappeared. This information had been shared, but it was unlikely that he would have been in such a terrible state. Oh, I thought Feldway was the mastermind behind it. I can't believe it. What happened? Velgrind was confused, while Obra was astonished. Everyone had a bad feeling in their hearts. Feldway was still alive, but his body was beginning to disintegrate. If things continue like this, there will be only a short time left before they completely disappear. Could it be that Rimuru did this? Hinata muttered. Although she said it herself, Hinata herself didn't think so at all. In Rimuru's case, if his strength was such that he could overwhelm his opponents to this extent, she thought he would capture him alive and hold him accountable. Even if the outcome was the death penalty, he would start by making them admit their guilt. No matter how you looked at it, Feldway had just suffered a fatal blow. His body was beginning to disintegrate from the extremities, scattering into particles. As he was a spiritual life form, it was possible that he could be reincarnated or even possess another body to extend his life, but it seemed that Feldway's heart had also sustained serious damage. Hey, did you even disobey me? Dino asked as he picked up Feldway. Feldway responded with self-mockery. HMPH, even though I had been praying so much for his resurrection, this is still a lame story. That is a positive statement. Dino was surprised and stared at Feldway. Pico and Gracia were also looking at Feldway with complicated expressions. However, Dino remembered that this was no time for such leisurely behavior, and looked up at the sky in a panic. It was past noon. In the aftermath of the fierce fighting on the ground, The sky is clear and cloudless. I saw a tiny dot. There's no way they'll let me off the hook. What should we do? I don't think we have a chance of winning. Well, it's impossible. We're so powerless that we don't even bother to try our best. Seeing Dino and the others having this conversation, Obra also realized that something was up. Or rather, Dino and the others thought it was pointless to oppose him, and when it came to someone who could defeat Feldway, Ivalage might meet the criteria, but he was here, so that was not the case. This limited the possibilities. I don't think it's possible, but is it Lord Veldanava? Everyone's eyes were focused on Obra as she spoke. Dino and the others looked away uncomfortably. That was the answer. Sorry, Obra, I was unfit to be a leader. Feldway apologized. Obra was shocked by this and realized that the worst had happened. It was a major incident, with the stubborn Feldway admitting his fault. There is no doubt that Veldanava has been revived, and this is the result. Dino's serious injuries and Feldway's near death were all Veldanava's doing. Upon realizing this, Obra also fell silent. A heavy atmosphere began to hang in the air. Before anyone could be surprised by God's resurrection, everyone realized that something terrible had happened. Naturally, everyone was shaken and unsure of how to respond to this. I have one question. Do you know what your brother's purpose is? Velgrind began to speak. They say the world is reborn. It seems that they discard the failed work and create something new. Dino and Feldway answered at the same time. I thought so. Velgrind nodded. That's a big problem. Ruminus spat out the words. It's not something that can be summed up in just one sentence, but that was the only way I could describe the situation. So, what are you all planning to do? The meaning of that question was that he wanted to confirm everyone's will as to whether they would obey the Creator God or resist him. This is no longer something that can be forced. If we follow God's will, there is nothing that can stop it. For those like Benimaru and Hinata who had no direct connection to him, whether he was a god or not was of no concern to them. However, to Velgrind and Veldora he is an older brother, and to Obra he is her biological father. It is not a relationship that can be easily cut off, so it is no wonder that she is troubled. That said, time is limited. Although there was no sign of Veldanava making a move, the time for a decision was approaching. Ruminas and the others had no hesitation in becoming enemies. He had no intention of letting the world he had cherished and protected be destroyed so easily. He was determined to assert himself firmly, even if the other party was the Creator God. As for me, I will just obey Rimuru-sama. Even if I don't listen, he'll probably say something like, "You're trying to destroy our world. Seriously, stop messing around." Benimaru spoke with a wry smile. Hinata nodded at this. That's certainly what he would say. Besides, I have no intention of just following his orders. I think it's strange that just because someone is a god, they can do whatever they want. Partly due to her family background, Hinata has complicated feelings about the concept of God. Rumina's was an exception, as she was both her savior and friend. Following Benimaru and Hinata, Testarossa laughed. There is no need to worry. We simply obey Rimuru-sama. The Testarossa doesn't waver. To begin with, the demons are a naturally occurring race and have no loyalty to the Creator God. They have likes and dislikes, and while Guy and others have formed personal friendships with them, there are no obligations. Ultimately, it is up to you to choose your state of being through free will. So Testarossa had made up her mind. Most likely, Carrera and Ultima had made up their minds as well. I'm up to Masayuki. Velgrind also has a selfish personality, so her standards for judgment are always the same. Just follow the decision of your loved one. Masayuki was suddenly faced with an important decision. but he remained calm. Some say that the capacity has already been exceeded. With a bodhisattva-like smile, he empties his mind. It was a technique that Masayuki had acquired as a way to avert his eyes from the horrors of the battlefield. I don't want to die yet. Masayuki answered with eyes that seemed to have opened to enlightenment. That was all Masayuki wanted. If they had come this far and God were to destroy the world, all their hard work up until now would have been for nothing. Masayuki thought that this was unlikely to happen. Also, I felt like I heard a voice deep in my heart. Has that guy gone mad? I'm going to have to punch him and wake him up. This was the will of his past self, someone who seemed to be Rudra. That was appealing to Masayuki. There was no reason to oppose that opinion, so Masayuki decided to comply. Obediently. With this, Velgren's policy was also decided. If her brother had really resurrected and decided to destroy the world, then all fate would be sealed. But even so, she could live for the ones she loved until the very last moment. That was all Velgren needed. I'll be with you until the end, Masayuki. Yeah. That's right. I think I'll try a little harder. Masayuki thought that he wasn't as scary as he'd expected. One reason for this is that the story is too grand, with stories like the resurrection of God. But more than that, having Velgrand with me is a big deal. I was using my luck to the fullest, and I also felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that if this didn't work, then nothing else would. It was a feeling akin to resignation, but Masayuki somehow felt that things would work out somehow. That's probably, hey everyone, thank you for your hard work, everyone. Perhaps it was because I heard a carefree voice say this. Emme. To make things easier, I turned back into a slime and, still being held in Diablo's arms, I teleported towards the battlefield accompanied by Guy and Velzard. It's harder than Shin and a little uncomfortable, but it's extremely stable. Or rather, I'm scared of myself because I'm starting to get used to it. As soon as he arrived, he jumped off Diablo. At the same time, he took on a human form and greeted everyone, saying, "Hello everyone, thank you for your hard work." Emme. Greetings are the basis of everything. I wasn't late or anything, so there was no need to make excuses. However, I felt a bit uncomfortable, as if I had joined the party late when everyone else was working hard. Greetings were also useful, in the sense of disguising this. In fact, any time I had to think about such things disappeared the moment I witnessed the devastation on the ground. It was a terrible situation. Benimaru, please report the situation. Rimuru-sama, I am so glad that you are safe. As soon as he saw me, Benimaru's expression turned joyful, and he gave me a rough report. In this regard, thought transmission is extremely convenient. So Veldura lost. I haven't lost yet. Milim was also defeated. It hasn't been done. While Veldura was fighting Ivalage, only his voice responded. As soon as Milim got up, she showed her competitive spirit. It's good to see that he's doing well, but it's true that Ivalage is a real pain. All that was left was the enemy boss, or so I thought, but it turned out to be incredibly strong. This is a common story in manga. In addition to that, there was the resurrection of Veldanava. It seemed that Dino and the others had already spread the word about Veldanava's existence without me having to explain it. I thought about it positively, as it saved me a lot of trouble. The dilemma is what to do about Feldway. I saw Feldway lying on the ground. No matter how you look at it, he is dying. Setting aside the question of what death means to a spiritual life form, it seemed that the energy was continuing to flow out, and it would only be a few hours until it was completely depleted. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu, that looks good, Feldway. Diablo provoked them. Living up to his reputation as a master of provocation, Diablo is merciless towards his opponents, no matter the time, place, or situation. HMPH, I was stupid. That's right, that's all I can say. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but the extent of his mistake was so terrible that I didn't feel like comforting him. You've only just realized this now. Oh dear, this is why you're so stupid. Diablo is harsh. In other words, stupid is not a word you would use to describe someone. That's some pretty serious insults. People might say it behind someone's back. But I don't think anyone would say it to their face. But since the person in question is Feldway, there's no need to sympathize. Hey, Diablo, even if it's true, don't say that. Dino was trying to reprimand him, but there was some venom in his words. It seems I wasn't the only one who thought so. Dino isn't following up either. Isn't that a good idea? He should reflect on his actions, and I'd like to complain about it to my heart's content. That's true, but saying that to someone who's dying. Well, at the very least, if Feldway hadn't held Lord Veldanava back, we would have died a long time ago. In this way, Pico and Gracia were also confiding their complicated feelings to each other. It seemed that he shared the same feelings as Dino, but his attitude was a little indecisive. Obra also seemed to have some thoughts on the matter, but she drew a line and didn't join in the conversation. It was Zarario who came rushing over who intervened. I was curious and came over, and it's Feldway. Why are you dying? He declared, glaring at Feldway. Feldway smiled at Zalario. I wanted to apologize to you too. I'm sorry, Zalario. Huh, is it too late now? HMPH, I don't have much time left. Feldway laughs with self-deprecation. Then, as he thought back on his past actions, he began to speak as if he were repenting, regretting, and regretting. You see, I was blind. I believed that this was Lord Veldanava's wish, and without questioning my actions, I continued to commit foolish acts. There is no way to atone for my sins, but there is one last thing I regret. Dino, Pico, and Gracia. Obra. And then there's Zalario. I listened quietly. The final words of a former friend. You see, I want to rescue that person who continues to wander astray even now. The words he spoke solemnly were still as strong as ever and contained unfading words of loyalty to his master. I was impressed by their spirit alone. However, it will be difficult to make that wish come true. If Veldanava had listened to her advice, he wouldn't have ended up in this situation. From what Velzard had said, it seemed like he was driven by dangerous thoughts. Even now, it is looking down on us from the sky, but there is only one reason why. It is not moving. Because Ivalage is still alive and well. Rather than testing our strength, it seemed like he was trying to get the Ivalages to finish the matter on their own, without getting his hands dirty. Is that so? Maybe not. They don't seem to be wary of us. It doesn't seem like they're enjoying watching us struggle, or that they're waiting for something. It's unclear, but whatever their aim, we can deal with it, however. So don't let your guard down. Got it. I stood in front of Feldway, keeping a close eye on Veldanava. You couldn't do it, right? And yet you still intend to challenge Veldanava. Huff, that is my role. I must at least make use of this foolish body. Saying this, Feldway tries to stand up. But, however, that was enough to cause Feldwayer's arm to give way, and he fell to the ground. Again, in an embarrassing fashion. Even though he was so self-centered and cautious. Now it is a pitiful sight, unrecognizable from the past. I don't mean to sympathize, but I felt a little sorry for him. If I leave him like this, he'll probably die, but in the first place, can I help him? Yes, it is possible. Oh, so that's possible. In that case, I guess I'll just have to worry about it later. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, as the saying goes. Feldway is trying to stop Veldanava, so let's just accept that he's our ally for now. I have a policy of using anything that is available, so it only took a moment of hesitation. Good, good, then I will request your cooperation. I will help you from now on, so until we have dealt with Veldanava, you will be under our command. I interrupted Feldway and told him this unilaterally. For now, let's start with treatment. Leave it to me. Following my decision, Seal began work. He transformed his arm into a slime and swallowed Feldway. Rai, Rimuru-sama, surely even a fool like this would be given a part of your noble body, a slime weapon. Diablo lamented, saying things like this, but I wonder what he's trying to do. They're not particularly noble, and even before that, I have no idea what they're doing or how they're doing it. The truth was that even if people lamented it, it was none of my business. And so, the treatment was completed in no time. I tossed the now fully recovered Feldway aside. Feldway recovered. He looks stunned, but I leave him alone. What's important is the future direction. In terms of unity of will, is it okay to aim to defeat Veldanava as well? As a member of society, it is natural to reach a consensus. If a policy is not decided at this point, the project may fall apart along the way. That was what I was thinking when I asked the question, but that's not an easy thing to say. Rumina's got angry at me. Even I can't revive him, so what's going on? She's muttering things like that, but I wish she'd stop taking her anger out on me. I don't understand it either, so I would like to ask Seal to take up such complaints. I knew you were an idiot, but do you really think you can beat your brother? Velgrain was astonished. Glancing sideways at Feldway, I thought to myself, he must be thinking he can win. But that's not how I intend to do it. We were all filled with the feeling that we should all do our best. Rimuru-san, you will hire me once everything is finished, right? Was there any need to say that now? I mean, it's Ramirez who's hearing you. Not only me, but even Pico and Gracia are amazed at Dino's laid-back attitude. I haven't lost. If I try my best, I can win. Are you still saying that? Veldora was still in the middle of a melee with Ivalage, even though he was pretty. Beaten up, he still managed to shout out in a clever way. It's obvious now that Veldora has a weakness for beautiful women. It was a meaningless assumption to say, if I give it my all, when I couldn't give it my all. Even I have no problem if I'm in perfect condition. In Millam's case, she was too violent. They too were using Veldora as a shield and desperately fighting back, but they were being pushed back. It's fine to be competitive, but I think you should face reality a little. There were others like Hinata who seemed to want to say something, but I understood that it was not a matter of reaching a consensus. If they were struggling against Ivalage, then they'd be helpless if Veldanava joined the fight. What will you do, Rimuru? Velzard asked me with a bright smile. Why are you asking me? Guy is here too, so you should ask him for his opinion. 2. Something seems to be going very wrong. I felt like I could sense an evil presence, someone trying to push all the responsibility onto me. Maybe it's just my imagination. Not true, absolutely not. Well, the conclusion is that there's no choice but to defeat it, so there's no point in worrying about it. I wonder if your sister is on our side too. That's right, as long as I have Guy, that's fine. What a coincidence. As long as I have Masayuki, that's enough for me. The dragon species, sisters engaged in a self-centered conversation. Whether they won or lost, it was fine as long as their way of life didn't waver. I would like to follow his example, but for me, that alone is not enough. A battle only has meaning if it is won. So, I would like to consider a positive strategy. Rimuru-kun. No, that proposal is rejected. You haven't said anything yet. It's too late now that you've said that, but to begin with, I don't have any good memories of when you used to call me Kun. As soon as I heard Guy's soothing voice, I immediately rejected it. Guy complained, but it was none of my business. I welcome a positive meeting, but no matter how I look at it, they were just trying to push the trouble onto me. Well, that's fine. I'll take on Ivalage, you just keep Veldanava under control. Teeth. Guy had promised to keep Veldanava company, but before I knew it, the deal had changed. I don't remember agreeing to it, so I would like to try to argue, but it seems like this is not the time for that. I'm telling you to buy time. You're good at that, right? Well, I'm good at it. But why do I have the most important role? You see, I was tired from dealing with the out-of-control Milim. Forget about that story. That's right, don't bring up old stories. No, 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 this isn't something that happened in the past. It's something that happened today. Phew, if I worry about it, I'll lose. We should probably just ignore this and force our opinion on them. You were dealing with Velzard-san, who was acting selfishly and violently. I solved that. That's right. Rimuru only cooperated. I was able to return to my senses because Guy persuaded me. Are they a lovey-dovey couple? This is why those dragon species are so troublesome. He doesn't even realize that he is favoring, hatting, or disliking someone, and he devotes himself to just one person. Even more than Guy, persuading Velzard was impossible. Realizing this, I decided to change my approach. Phew, I think I work a little too hard. It's a strategy that appeals to emotions. Or rather, it would be troubling to be asked to deal with the creator god. I was originally just an ordinary salaryman, and although I've been through my fair share of hell, I'm still just a humble, ordinary person. That's a stretch, but I'm nothing more than a demon lord. You know, Dino-san and Rumina-sama are here too, forcing this important mission on me alone. Okay, you do it. Rimuru-san, there's no need to call me San. Just give me a pay raise to make up for it. Don't say it with a smile. By the way, negotiating your salary before you even start working is nonsense. Hire me too. Please do the same. I'll work harder than Dino. Well, compared to Dino, anyone would be a hard worker. There's no need to call me Sama. It's disgusting. That's a harsh thing to say. It's true that I had ulterior motives. I tried various ways to escape, but it seemed impossible. Guy's expression became serious as he said this. Seriously, I lost to Veldanava once. I don't know how much of his strength he has regained from his prime, but I think we have a higher chance of winning if we all challenge him together. It was rare for Guy to reveal his true feelings, so I had no choice but to nod. While I was buying time against Veldanava, Guy defeated Ivalage. After that, everyone would beat Veldanava to a pulp. That was the general plan. Don't say things like full of holes. There is a critical lack of information, making it impossible to come up with an effective strategy. Incidentally, we have decided not to inform the people from all countries gathered here about Veldanava's resurrection. The decision was made that there was no point in saying anything, and that it would only cause panic. With the course of action decided, Guy headed towards Ivalage. As for me, I plan to leave it alone until Veldanava comes down. I'm not trying to slack off. If they were going to buy time, they should delay the start of the battle even a little. What a great idea. I was about to congratulate myself when a man who looked just like Feldway stood in front of me. Wow, teleportation. I quickly dodged it. Veldanava used teleportation and swung his arm towards my head. If I had been even a little late, my head would have been chopped off. If I had let my guard down, it would have been over. I'm grateful for Seal's advice. My neck is gone, I'm fine. There's no way it's okay. That's what stops people, right? It's a slime, but that's not the issue. My immortality is quite impressive, really. Still, it seems like something has finally happened. Veldanava looked at his hands curiously. It looks exactly like Feldway, just a different color. Her eye color is gold. His long, jet black hair shone like stars. They probably looked the same, but strangely, Veldanava seemed sexier. Did you avoid it? Well, you'd avoid it. I don't feel pain, but I don't like pain. Or rather, as the term phantom limb pain suggests, even just feeling the pain is difficult. I have a very vivid imagination, so I think I'd be shocked if my head was cut off. Even if that wasn't the case, I would definitely refuse. You are indeed a maximum singularity. Teeth. He started saying things that didn't make sense, but I had no idea what he meant. So naturally, I answered, I don't know. Are you really the stellar king dragon, Veldanava-san? That's right. When I asked him directly, he answered simply. Thinking that this was the case, I continued to ask questions one after the other. Why are you trying to destroy the world? It may seem like I'm provoking them, but I think it's okay. Just like in a fight, if you get underestimated, you lose. You must try to remain calm in this situation. Because we've decided you're a failure. Teeth. It clicked, but I had to bear it. I mean it literally. I just couldn't bring myself to forgive those who took my beloved wife. Veldanava said this, and this time he fixed his fighting spirit and aura into the shape of a sword and took a stance. I'm very happy that they've gone to the trouble of preparing weapons to fight someone like me. At that moment, a reliable ally joined the battle. Feldway stood next to me, sword at the ready. Good luck, Feldway. I'd be grateful if you could repay me right now for helping you. You are wrong. As your vassal, I will stop you. Okay, good. Feldway, that's the spirit. I'm fully prepared to back you up. Guy was fighting against Ivalage, while Milim and Veldora were supporting him. The sisters Velzard and Velgrind were in charge of containing the aftermath of the battle. In other words, if we were to go on a rampage here, it could lead to a major disaster. Feldway will be the opponent, and I'll support him. The dimensions are designed to freeze the surface of the Earth and minimize the impact on the land. That's my authority, right? Velzard seemed to want to say something, but I ignored her. By the time I analyzed it, I was able to handle it as a matter of course, explaining. It would take too long, so I just pretended I hadn't noticed. On the side of Ivalage, it was Velzard and the others. As for Veldanava, I will take responsibility and keep him in check. This was the most natural and least damaging combination. Incidentally, Benimaru is also here, and Testarossa is waiting. Diablo is also there. He's a pain, but he's reliable at times like this. It seemed that Ultima had also rushed to our side, and we were perfectly prepared to cooperate. However, he was worried that something might happen until he understood the extent of Veldanava's strength. Victory or defeat isn't decided by the amount of energy alone, but against an opponent with an incomparable amount of power. Techniques alone are not enough. I understood that Ivalage was dangerous because Veldora had complained about it to me. However, there is still too little information about Veldanava. Hopping for Feldway's best efforts, I decided to wait and see what would happen. Now the battle has begun. Can this really be called a battle? Veldanava was strong. In fact, I expected it to be weak, but it was honestly worse than I expected. My first thought was that Feldway was being treated like a child. Feldway's sword possessed tremendous power, even at a glance. Converting that power into existence value, it is estimated to be in the tens of millions. Well, the exact number is meaningless, so let's leave that aside for now. Even though he was swinging that incredibly powerful sword, Veldanava was able to easily handle it with just his own fighting spirit and aura that he had transformed into a sword. And it has always been passive. Although he did not initiate any attacks, he acted like a leader who was supporting. Feldway. With such a large gap, Feldway had no chance of winning. What should I do? Yes, I can understand why you are worried. If I hadn't sworn loyalty to Milim, Sama, I would have blindly followed my master. Such a voice was heard from behind. It belonged to Zalario and Obra, who were watching the match. Leaving Obra aside, Zalario had pledged his loyalty to Veldanava. It was understandable that he would have mixed feelings. That's why I'm saying it. If you intend to follow Veldanava, I won't stop you. Is that okay? It's not good, but it can't be helped, right? Ivarid's destructive acts were unjustified, but I can understand why Veldanava wanted to destroy the world. When I said that, Zalario fell silent and thought deeply. As I just said, I understand how you feel. Ivalage is pure malice. It's like a child innocently breaking something. There's no meaning to it. It's the adult's responsibility to scold them. On the other hand, Veldanava is different. He had a clear purpose and was driven by solid reasons. Even I lost my temper when my loved ones were about to be taken away from me. Fortunately, we avoided tragedy that time. What if the damage was even worse, and it was impossible to recover? In that case, I couldn't deny the possibility that I might have gone mad as well. I'd like to think that he didn't try to destroy the world, but I'm not sure. Veldanava had himself and his wife killed by humans. His beloved daughter, Milim, was also on the verge of becoming unhappy. Because of humans. Considering these circumstances, it seems reasonable to choose to reset everything and start over. It was a bold move that only a god could pull off, but it made sense as a reason. For his actions, well, I can understand it, but I don't agree with it. From the creator's perspective, the sovereignty of his creations is probably not something he should be concerned about. If a robot created as a servant were to disobey humans, humans would probably get angry and say, "Don't mess with me." The plot of an artificial intelligence created by humans rebelling has been humorously depicted in movies and manga from all over the world, past and present. I think that whether artificial intelligence should be granted equal rights to humans is also an issue that needs to be discussed. Seal is my best and strongest partner. It was supposed to be an ability or skill that I created, but now it seems to have gained a sense of self and is living freely. To me, Master is everything. Thank you. Ideally, we would build the best possible relationship like we do, but sometimes that's not possible. When that happens, to what extent should we recognize the rights of our creations? In this case, that creation is us. Even if they tell me that I am a failure and will be eliminated, I cannot agree. We live in this world. As long as he was alive, he was determined to resist all injustice with all his might. That's why my reason for fighting is to survive. As if he had seen through my thoughts, Veldanava sweetly invited me. I don't understand why you would defy me. Feldway, you were planning to take us to the new world, weren't you? Along with Zalario, Obra, and Dino. Guy is my friend, and I intend to keep all the other useful people alive. There's no need to oppose me for the sake of incompetent and vulgar people, is there? Those words are fascinating. Veldanava intends to start over after having Ivarij destroy the world. He says that he will take those he recognizes in this world with him to the next world. I haven't been invited, but to be honest, if I was approached, I'd probably be worried. I think that's impossible. That's right. If I were to include everyone I'm connected to, then it would no longer be a matter of initializing. Conditions like narrowing it down to only those directly involved are rejected. If we were to carry over the current relationships as they are, it would have an impact on almost all of the inhabitants of this world. After all, the people I'm connected to have acquaintances, and those people also have people they love. If only a portion of the population were to emigrate, there would be resentment no matter what we did. However, if there is no other way, we will have to make a choice. This time it's different. It's all or nothing. There may be some who are opposed to going against God, but I hope those people will just pray quietly. I intended to fight to the end and seize the future. I will accompany you to the end. I have already analyzed the method of world creation, so I will be able to deal with anything that happens. Wow, you're as reliable as ever. I couldn't understand it at all, but with Seal there, it seemed like anything would work out. With this realization in mind, I watched the situation unfold. Feldway thought carefully and slowly opened his mouth. It's true that to me, a bunch of random humans don't have much value, but it's different for you. You were the only one who mattered to me, but to you, there was my wife, Lady Lucia, and your daughter, Lady Millam. Your 3 younger siblings are also important to you, and you were also friends. With Guy and Rudra, they love and cherish this world. If you were to take that away from them, you would surely regret it. Feldway spoke passionately. If he understood that much, why did he do something like that? Or maybe Diablo punched him, and he came to his senses. It seems my persuasion was effective, Dino said with a smug look on his face. I was a little surprised that it turned out to be useful in an unexpected way. For the time being, I just praised him, saying, "You did a good job." Dino's feelings seemed to have reached Feldway, but not everything goes well in this world. Feldway's appeal was filled with compassion for Veldanava. If his words resonated with him, it made him think that perhaps he would change his mind. Unfortunately, Veldanava's response was cold. If you're looking for regrets, I already did it, when I lost Lucia. It was a chilling, emotionless voice. What lies there is a bottomless void. By giving free will to life, fools who draw their bows against God were born. No. That's not right. If they had simply defied me, I would have forgiven them, but they took something precious from me. How can I forgive them? Veldanava's resolve was unwavering. Feldway's voice fell into disarray in the face of his ironclad will, and fell flat. It seems that the only solution is to decide the outcome. I was convinced of this, and let out a melancholic sigh. Feldway was blown away by Veldanava's intimidation. It seemed to be a sign that he wasn't going to get in the way, but Feldway stood up again, and even though he probably knew he couldn't win, he didn't give up and went on. The challenge. You've got guts. I'm just stubborn. I thought you'd give up sooner. Surprisingly, it's holding up quite well. It seems that his body is able to regenerate in time, and even minor injuries seem to heal in an instant. Since he was blessed with Rimuru-sama's noble blood, that level is only natural, Diablo said, with a frustrated look on his face. Someone heard that one word and reproached him. It's a Testarossa. Come to think of it, that fool was also given to us by Rimuru-sama. Yes, that's right, it's disgusting. In that case, it seems that something struck him during his conversation with Diablo. Just as I thought that, I suddenly felt like I was about to collapse. I quickly support her. Oh, are you okay? The effects of what happened earlier have also caused damage to me. Testarossa said this with a fleeting smile. If you don't know her true nature, she just appears to be a fragile beauty. I guess I'm pretty stupid, since I was fooled even though I knew the truth. Diablo clicked his tongue for some reason and started to say something, but before he could do so, Testarossa, leaning on me, spoke up. Rimuru-sama, I have a favor to ask. Testarossa looks up at me. What is it? I have a weakness for beautiful women. Hinata looked at me in amazement, but she was easily fooled by this kind of behavior. In order to get myself back in shape right now, please bestow some of Rimuru-sama's flesh and blood upon me. Well, you want my slime cells. Well, that's fine, but I don't think it has that much of an effect. Phew, then I'll prepare some special recovery medicine. Yes, please. And so, Testeros's request was granted, and she had the same recovery potion. That had healed Diablo prepared, a fake special recovery potion. However, the story didn't end there. That's unfair. Rimuru-sama, I want one too. Ultima was begging me cutely. Ultima is a cute and good girl, so I can't help but listen to her requests. Although he has a cruel and brutal side, it's hard to believe that it's the same person when you see it with your own eyes. When Ultima asked me to do something like that, all I could say was sure. I had another special recovery potion prepared, this one mixed with my slime. Cells. Just as I was thinking of handing this over to the two of them, Karara appeared. Karara, who had apparently fallen asleep from exhaustion, was being carried by Esprit and Ajara when she suddenly woke up and jumped up. My lord, please stop leaving me out. Karara also wants my special recovery potion as a reward. I heard that he did his best to defeat the dangerous guy, so this is a small price to pay. I nodded in agreement and asked for a third one. And so he handed it to the 3 expectant girls. The 3 girls were delighted and drank it all up. Now you can't brag about it anymore, Testarossa said, smiling at Diablo. Sorry about that. Ultima also encouraged Diablo. This is amazing. I feel so much better now. Karara was happy at her own pace. What are these girls doing while Feldway is fighting so desperately? That's what I thought, but I was easily swept away, so I was just as guilty. Feldway's efforts are beginning to reach their limits. Just as I was thinking it was about time for me to take action, Zalerio spoke up. I cannot betray Lord Veldanava. Diablo narrowed his eyes, so I calmed him down. It was better to be declared an enemy than be betrayed. Well, that's it. To begin with, we don't have a deep relationship with Zalerio. He seemed to get along well with Leon, but we were enemies. We are currently at the stage where we hope to call a ceasefire and build a good relationship from now on. However, it would be naive to think that they would become allies. You're as earnest as ever. It's because you're stubborn like that Feldway takes advantage of you, Obra retorted. In fact, it seems that he was a little late in making a decision and ended up being dominated. This could also be seen as a cautious personality, so it's not a question of whether it's good or bad. You could also say it was just bad luck. Therefore, I respect Zalerio's decision. I'd be happy if you wouldn't get in the way at least. I asked him to do so. Feldway is at the mercy of Veldanava. Veldanava was probably checking his physical condition. If he wanted to end it, he could just use the same attack that had left Feldway in tatters earlier, and it would be over in an instant. Normally, I would think that such composure would be fatal, but this time it was different. Just by looking at it, it's clear that it's becoming more and more sophisticated. In other words, Feldway had no chance of winning from the start, but even his value as a training opponent was coming to an end. If Zalerio were to join the battle at this point, it would no longer be a matter of buying time. Rimuru-sama, should I get rid of Zalerio? Stop it. Diablo spoke with a strong desire to kill, but was rejected. Benimaru shrugged in exasperation, but he was watching the situation with the determination that he would not stay silent if Zalerio got in the way. Zalerio says, honestly, I don't know which is the right answer. I believe it is the duty of a vassal to follow the wishes of their lord. However, I feel that Feldway is not wrong. The only option I can have right now is to do nothing. Although it was a very negative idea, it seemed like one good answer. To be honest, it's fine as long as it doesn't get in the way. Those who had a close relationship with Veldanava would be worried about what to do with themselves. Having someone like Zalerio watching over them would be The greatest help to us. While this was going on, Feldway collapsed. It seems that infinite regeneration had been activated thanks to my cells, but even with that unexpected side effect, it was impressive how it held up. After all, Veldinava's sword skills alone were the best. He was probably better than not only Hakuryu, but Ajura as well, and there was no doubt that he was an unrivaled master. Not only that, he also demonstrated a martial art that incorporated teleportation. It would have been impossible to respond to a teleportation from a sliding step, which would have seemed like the movement of a sword on first sight. Feldway had also been slashed. It seemed Veldinava had no intention of killing, but it was a blow that would have resulted in instant death for a normal person. Could you have reacted? Q-fu-fu-fu-fu. At first glance, it was a bit harsh. Hearing Diablo's honest answer, all I could say was, "That's right. The sword alone is this strong." I began to lose confidence in whether it was really possible to stop Veldinava. It's okay. That unfounded consolation only made me feel more uneasy. And this is where the real horror began. Veldinava said, "It's going to take a little more time for you to get your senses back. It's going to be boring just watching, isn't it? I'll prepare some playmates for you guys." It's not like he's regained his sense of intuition. It's still amazing enough. I was wondering what else he wanted to do, but I soon understood what he meant. From here, on 3 sides except for the east, I felt a huge presence returning. I think it was Kakashi, Habataki, and Suimu. It seems that Ivarage was sad about losing her children. I did something to help. Veldinava said so. You're kidding me, right? I went to the trouble of defeating him. I guess that was a failure. Next time I'll have to cut him into pieces until he turns to dust so he can't revive. Ultima and Karara's murmurs gave me confidence. The real battle against the malice that wishes for the destruction of the world is yet to come. Guy was overwhelming Ivarage. He easily dominates the battle with Ivarage and pushes him back towards Tensukkaku once again. This reduced the burden on those who were watching over them. As expected of Guy, Velzard said proudly. With Waldo out of his reach, Guy was invincible. He even effortlessly cut in half the destructive ray fired by Ivarage, obliterating it. In contrast to Velzard, who looked happy, Velgrand was stunned. You're kidding me. I lost a lot of energy after being hit by that thing. No matter how much they tried to protect the weaker ones, it's true that they couldn't defeat them when they were hit head-on. Guy was doing this without any difficulty. Velgrind was once again astonished at Guy's awesomeness, realizing that he was even more powerful than she had imagined. Velzard explained to Velgrind with a smile. Of course, even my strongest secret technique, cold absorption whiteout. Absorb was cut in half by Guy in one slash. It's only natural that an attack inferior to that wouldn't work. Velzard knew more about Guy's strength than anyone else. That's why he has some complicated aspects, but he is happy that his beloved Guy is being praised. Although Velgrind thought that her older sister was troublesome, she had no choice but to accept it. In fact, Guy is strong. Ivarage caught the world, Waldo. That guy had seemingly fired carelessly with compassion, karma. However, he was defeated and blown away. Although their sword skills were equal, there was a huge difference in their skill and level. Kyaha. You're nothing special either. The combination of his overwhelming sword speed and efficient sword movement made it impossible for Ivarage's casual swordsmanship to cope, and Guy was not so lenient as to allow Ivarage to grow. That's strange. Even though I'm having a hard time, it looks like Guy is pushing forward. This makes Guy look stronger than me. Milim lamented, looking frustrated. In fact, anyone could see that Guy's abilities were superior. I was concentrating on stalling you, so I wasn't being serious. If I was serious, I wouldn't lose. If he was serious, he was superior, or so Veldora seemed to say. The fact that he used the word serious twice gave off a strong sense of sour. Grapes. Yes, that's right. I was just tired too. Milim also added more excuses. That's true. If it were me, it wouldn't be a hard fight. Q ha 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 ha. Velzard was the one who heard this and reprimanded him. My, are you trying to say that Veldora-chan is superior to Guy? Huh. For an instant, time seemed to stop and Veldora stiffened. There was a hint of impatience on his face, as if he wished he hadn't said anything unnecessary. That's because, it looks like Guy is unleashing a cool technique. Picture. Veldora used his wits to successfully divert Velzard's attention. He then made a firm vow to never step on a landmine again. Without paying any attention to the reactions of those around him, Guy calmly cornered Ivalage. He had entrusted Rimuru with dealing with Veldanava, but he understood that it was an unreasonable request. Well, maybe I can do something about that guy, but Veldanava is stronger than me. I need to quickly get rid of him and provide support. Surprisingly, Guy is a man of strong sense of duty. If he found out that Rimuru was leaving it to Feldway and watching from the sidelines, he would undoubtedly be furious. Unaware of this, Guy was observing Ivarage. Guy's strength basically begins with observing his opponents. He doesn't become arrogant or conceited because he's strong, but rather he sees through the weaknesses of his opponents and exploits them. However, since Guy never deals with truly weak people, there was a hidden and important purpose behind his observation. He wanted to understand the authority and special abilities that the person possessed and make them his own. The numerous experiences he had accumulated in this way supported Guy as an absolute powerhouse. The same is true when facing Ivalage. Although Ivalage possesses special abilities, he does not possess powers such as ultimate abilities or ultimate skills. Even without such things, he was at the pinnacle of his status as a god of destruction. However, things are different when facing Guy. Kyaha. It's useless. Guy easily parried the powerful sword strike, and it was all over. In terms of existence value, Ivalage was overwhelmingly superior, but in terms of maximum instantaneous output, Guy was superior. Just like Diablo, Guy was able to gather magical power from the atmosphere and use his maximum energy amount as the maximum output. In this case, magical power refers to the amount of magic essence or energy. It means that one can continue fighting without exhausting oneself, and even though he had just gone through a long battle with Velzard, Guy was barely exhausted. I feel tired, but it's at a negligible level. This combat sense is Guy's greatest strength. Through the few minutes of combat, Ivalage also understood how dangerous Guy was, the appearance of an enemy that could not be defeated by overwhelming force came as a surprise to Ivalage. However, the emotion that Ivalage felt was joy. Kyaha. Ivalage's presence changed. From a child who only played with toys, to a child who is full of curiosity and wants to learn from others. Modeled after the peerless Beauty Lucia, with the cruelty of a child on her face. Ivalage stared at Guy with clear eyes, looking more terrifying than ever before. Ivalage remembered. I know you, I remember. Long ago, Ivalage had suffered a painful defeat against Guy. They decided to escape from the Earth to another world. My sense of self had not yet developed, and at the time I only felt a sense of pain. But I remembered the frustration I felt at the time. I hate you. What a coincidence, I hate you too. Guy responded and resumed his attack on Ivalage. However, this is where Ivalage really comes into its own. Although she has taken on the appearance of Lucia, her body is that of Ivalage. Even if she is slashed, she will regenerate using lightning-fast regeneration. So, slashing attacks will do almost no damage. Guy was also adding impacts, causing damage to accumulate throughout Ivilage's entire body, but the speed of its regeneration was still a bottleneck. It took a fair amount of time for Ivilage to tire out. Naturally, Guy also understands this. We are still in the wait-and-see stage, and intend to make our move once we find a decisive factor. The reality was that he couldn't afford to be so leisurely, but Guy wasn't in a hurry. He intended to steadily corner him and kill him for sure. But however, this is where a change occurs in Ivilage. Kayaha, the holy remains of Lucia that Ivilage ate, also contained information about the power that had resided within Lucia. It had been fragmented and no longer retained its original form, but this did not concern Ivilage. Individual, Ivilage has acquired ultimate ability, ultimate skill, king of knowledge. Raphael. The language of the world rang in Ivilage's mind. Ivilage was able to restore his powers from the remnants left behind in Lucia's holy remains. From here on, Ivilage will increase his skill and level at an astonishing speed. What a pain. Guy clicked his tongue in disgust. Guy hadn't let his guard down from the start, but with Ivarage's transformation coming to this point, he realized he had no choice but to give up hope of a quick resolution. Sorry, Rimuru, this is going to drag on for a while. Guy muttered an apology to Rimuru. He then continued to observe more deeply while revising his plan to attack Ivilage. Guy and Ivilage's sword attacks were becoming more and more intense. It is invisible to ordinary people. In this case, an ordinary person means someone below the super awakened million class level. This means that the majority of people in the world are unable to even recognize this battle. Or rather, if he stayed here, he would be hit by the pressure of the sword and turn to dust in an instant. Although such a fierce battle was unfolding, the real action had not yet begun. Ivilage is currently learning. It wasn't just from Guy's technique, but also from the memories within his own body. The main focus is on Lucia's memories, which are the source of her current appearance. Although it was fragmented and incomplete, it was easy to reproduce the techniques that the body remembered. She was Rudra's younger sister and Veldanava's wife. Her existence value during her lifetime was over 1 million, making her a super awakened 1 million class being, an existence that transcended the lifespan. There was no way that Lucia was weak, and although not to the same extent as her brother Rudra, she had mastered swordsmanship to a certain extent. Ivilage quickly mastered this skill. Not only that, but he also carefully examined all of the information elements of those he had eaten and reproduced all potentially useful technology. This will allow him to become skilled enough to rival Guy. This growth rate is too abnormal. Guy clicked his tongue and complained. They had been aiming to reach a swift resolution without holding back. However, their plans had gone awry. Kyaha. Ivarage thrust his left hand, which was not holding his sword, forward. Just before he was about to turn his hand towards him, Guy sensed the danger and jumped away. Immediately afterwards, a near-light-speed destructive ray was fired from the palm of his hand, piercing the spot where Guy had been. If he had been one step slower, his body would have been pierced. The destructive ray collided with the wall of Tentsukaku, causing the building to shake violently. It was a terrifying impact, but its power was nothing compared to what it would have been if it had been released without converging. Even if the amount of energy is the same, the pain felt is different when hit with a surface and when stabbed with the tip of a needle. By the same logic, the power of the concentrated destructive beam was orders of magnitude greater, even though it had the same energy. Guy remained calm despite seeing this, but the others were speechless. GRRR, that's a power that seems to rival my Dragon Star Explosive Flame Ha. Drago Nova. I can handle it. You idiot. There's no point in arguing whether you can endure it or not. That's true. Either way, the rate of energy loss is greater when you're hit with it on. Your entire face. Even if you converge it and pierce the target, the amount of damage will likely be less. Milim and Veldora were just pretending to be tough, but Velgrind and Velzard were calmly analyzing the situation. Velgrind nodded, agreeing that Velzard was right. In fact, Velgrind had put herself in the same situation and was predicting which would cause greater damage. The answer she found was that being hit on the entire face would increase the defensive area and would also consume a large amount of energy. For spiritual life forms, physical loss is merely damage that can be regenerated. Unlike humans, they do not have vital organs, so even if a hole is made in the body, it is not fatal. However, if you are hit in the wrong place, you could lose the lower half of your body, making it difficult to continue fighting. If you end up expending a lot of energy to compensate, the amount of damage you can ignore will exceed your ability to tolerate. In that sense, it is important to make decisions at each stage, such as whether to ignore it and take it as it is, avoid it, or defend yourself. This time, Guy chose to evade. Therefore, there is zero energy loss. Not only that, this is also an important step forward. What is that? Kyaha. Ivalage was confident of his superiority. Guy, who had effortlessly cut through the destructive rays, avoided the converged beam. The destructive beam that is released to fill the entire surface is convenient as it can be fired quickly without having to aim. If you converge it, you will need to worry about accuracy, but if you think of it as a game, it can be fun. Ivalage seemed absorbed in his new game and fired a barrage of converging destructive rays at Guy. Kaihahata. For Ivalage, who boasts a bottomless amount of magical energy, this level of spam is like a walk in the garden. Without feeling tired, he thrust his left hand forward and fired a succession of convergent destructive rays. Guy dodges. Even though it was a near-light speed attack, he was able to perfectly predict the point of impact from the movement of Ivalage's palm, the fluctuations in the air, and the smell of burning air. While doing so, he prepares World Waldo and aims at Ivalage. I'll finish this soon. How cheeky. You. Guy dodged the converging destructive rays being spammed and closed in on Ivalage. Then he thrust out the world he was holding in his right hand, aiming for Ivalage's heart. This was the central core of Ivalage. Due to the high energy density, this was predicted to be one of its weak points. The moment Ivalage got close to him, both his sword and destructive ray were sealed away. If Guy's attacks had worked, that would have been the end of the battle. Kyaha. Guy thrust out the World Waldo and approached Ivalage. At that moment, Ivalage's chest glowed. The high energy density was due to the fact that he intended to fire a beam from there. I win. The recently fired convergent destructive beam of light, traveling at sublight speed, hadn't even diffused yet when it reached Guy's chest. It was not the right timing to avoid it, and Guy was in a desperate situation. It was only natural that Ivalage was confident of victory, but sweet. Guy had a relaxed expression. World Waldo pierces Ivalage. Kyaha. Ivarage couldn't understand what had happened. Just before it touched Guy's body, the convergent destructive rays dispersed. The reason for this was Guy's authority. To Guy, who could recreate Rimuru's authority, Gluttony King, Beelzebub, all emission-type attacks were nothing more than fodder that could be preyed upon. Guy had been able to prey on Ivarage's attacks from the start, but he had deliberately dodged them because he had been waiting for this moment. He hadn't used up that much energy, so by the time he was hit by this attack, he had already fully recovered. Guy said arrogantly, as usual, it's no big deal. In response, Ivarage let out a cry of resentment. You, Yao Yai. Just when I thought I had won, I felt like I had been thrown into hell. Before I even realized that I was angry, I was screaming out of frustration. Ivalage glared at Guy. Her beautiful face, which was identical to Lucia's, was distorted by hatred. Even Ivarage could not ignore this blow. It was not a fatal blow, but it was the first time he had ever been aware of the damage. This was a nostalgic experience for Ivalage. Guy was the cause back then, so remembering it makes me even angrier. At this moment, for the first time in his life, Ivarage recognized Guy as an enemy. As if targeting the gap in consciousness, Ivarage's body was enveloped in countless lights. Veldora and the others had become spectators, but they were receiving orders from Guy through thought transmission. Get ready, and ready to launch a full-power attack when I give the signal. Hearing this, Veldora complained. Grrr, Guy, acting all high and mighty. Milim joins in on this. Really, you can't order me around like that. He was unable to say that statement until the very end. At that moment, a cold breeze blew through, ordering me, what is it? Hey, Milim and Veldora-chan too, do you have any complaints? Try saying that, Velzard said with a smile. No, I have no complaints at all. Me too, of course I'll cooperate. Thank you. Since it was Guy's request, I have to listen carefully. With that feeling, Velzard threatened them, or rather, asked them to do so, and everyone present agreed. And he watched the battle. Guy dodged the converging destructive rays with you, shoo. Shaku, shoo, and even had a smile on his face. It wouldn't be a fatal blow if it hit, but it was a dangerous attack that couldn't be ignored, and yet Guy didn't seem to feel it was a threat. Seeing Guy like that, Veldora grumbled. But sister, isn't Guy being too careless? If he gets hit, he won't get away unscathed, so he should be more careful. Veldora thought it was fine to have some composure, but Guy was going too far. He pointed that out frankly, but Velzard's reply was cold. You see, Veldora-chan, Guy is different from you, he is strong. Stop judging him with your common sense. Veldora thought as she told him with a smile. I'm strong too, though. However, he was wise enough not to say anything, so he just nodded silently. Some say that rather than being wise, he was simply intimidated by his sister, but for the sake of Veldora's honor, he would lose if he cared too much about it. Ivalage's attacks became increasingly fierce and accurate. Seeing this, Milim started making a fuss. Is it really okay? I also acknowledge that Guy is a demon lord, but Ivarage was really strong, you know. Guy's fighting style is to avoid attacks by the tiniest of margins. He sometimes even manages to graze them, which makes the viewers nervous. Moreover, knowing the weight of Ivalage's blow, everyone except Velzard watched with anxiety. Velgrind remained silent because she did not want to anger her sister. If anything were to happen to Guy, she was ready to immediately come to his aid, and in order to answer Guy's request, she was refining a special move within her body. This is the most serious and correct response. Velzard also understood this and didn't say anything to Velgrind. Instead, she gently warned Veldora and Milim, it's about time to get ready. And then the moment came. The convergent destructive beam that was fired from Ivalade's chest hit Guy directly in the chest. Look, thought Veldora. I thought so, Milim thought. I don't think Guy will die from this, but a decrease in his fighting power is inevitable. If he had gone all out, that would be one thing, but if he went in alone and acted confident, but failed, then it's only natural that people would complain. Therefore, the two of them took this opportunity to criticize him, and were about to insist that they should all challenge him together without being stubborn. But before they could say anything, Guy gave an order. Now. At that moment, Veldora and Milim reflexively unleashed their special moves. Naturally, Milim used her full-power Dragon Star Explosion Flame Ha, Drago. Nova. He fired at Ivalage with enough power to shatter the equipment in both hands. Veldora fired the humanized version of Thunderstorm Roar, Ver. IIIT was the special move he had tried to use on Milim in her rampage, but was stopped by Chloe. It had a higher energy density than the Thunderstorm he unleashed in his dragon form. Just like Milim's pose, he held both palms forward and his wrists together, like the jaws of a dragon, and unleashed it with all his might. Velgrind is excellent. Without any delay, he unleashed Scorching Dragon Overlord Acceleration. Excitation, cardinal acceleration at maximum output. And Velzard was also the first to use Whiteout Absorb. She had intended to scold anyone who was late, but fortunately no one was rude, so Velzard was satisfied. And so, just as Guy had intended, all four of them used their special moves at the same time. These were the strongest people in the world, so the timing was perfect. At that moment, just as Guy had wished, an immense destructive force was generated. Nice job, you guys. Guy praised him. Although this rarely happens, Milim and Veldora will likely be dissatisfied and think that he is arrogant. Anyway, Guy had no intention of leaving the matter with Ivalage to someone else. He activated Gluttony King Beelzebub as if it were his own property, devouring the unprecedented energy that was supposed to be raging on the spot. He then integrated it all together, treating Milim's Dragon Star Explosion Overlord Drago Nova as a separate entity, and reconstructed it into a single directional wave. It's an unbelievable act. The combined destructive energy began to swirl around Ivalage. Kyaha. The smile had disappeared from Ivalage. He realized that if that much energy hit him directly, he wouldn't escape unscathed. At the same time, questions arose as to why that decisive moment had not yet arrived. The ultimate destructive energy continues to circulate around Ivalage. Seeing this, Veldora and Milim were indignant yet amazed. My power. Grin, first stop acting like Rimuru. I can't believe that even my powers would be used. This is too reckless. Velzard and Velgrind were more shocked than shocked. Oh my, if you can even do something like that, there's no way I could have. 1. I agree. The game with Rudra ended just because Guy had to go on a business trip. That's true. That's probably why he was so insistent on a proxy war. It was just as Velzard said. There's no fun in a game where the win is guaranteed. Guy believes that if you're going to compete with someone, it's best to take risks. Diablo was the same, and Testarossa, Carrera, and Ultima would probably agree. Even Mizari and Rain would agree with this way of thinking. The common thinking among Gensho and the others was that competitions are fun because there is a possibility of losing. And Guy was good at competitions. Since his defeat at the hands of Veldanava, he had not experienced a single defeat. It was Guy who once repelled the Ivalage. And it's the same this time. Now I'll give you something that hurts. Feel it until you die. Catastrophe. Acropsy. Guy unleashed his technique,